This is Mr. Morehouse, and I hope you're all having a good day. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the critical building blocks of a computer program, which is variables. Now, all of you are familiar with variables from your math classes, and typically an x, a y, whatnot, and you typically solve an equation for a specific variable or substitute a variable with a number and then solve an equation. Computer programs use variables in a very similar way, where a variable denotes where an actual value of some type can be used in a computer program, and with the idea that you could put many different things into that value and the program should still run, just like your equations should still work if you put any type of number of the correct type into the equation in place of the variable. The difference with computer programs is that you actually can put more than just numbers into variables. In fact, you could put text and all kinds of other things into variables. Let's go ahead and explore how you use variables in a computer program, and then what we'll do is we'll talk about the different types of variables, and then I'll give you an example in a computer program of how to actually use those variables. So, a variable is, in a computer program, looks like this. What it is, and think of a variable in a computer program like a suitcase of some type, where you can pack it full of a certain type of information, and then you can pull that out whenever you need to use it. What you do with a variable in a computer program is, first of all, you need to let the computer program know that you're going to use a variable and what its name is and what is the computer should expect to find in that variable, what type of a value. So first, what you do when you declare a variable is you type in a word called dim, which is short for dimension, and what that just means is that it says to the computer to set aside a certain dimension of physical memory within the computer in which it should store values for this variable. Next, you have the actual name of the variable, and it can be anything that you want. The practice that we're going to use is going to be to use a 3-letter prefix for our variables that will all be lowercase and that will typically match up with the first 3 letters of the type of variable that is the type of data that's going to be stored in this variable. So you can see int is short for integer, all lowercase, and then we put a name for our variable that is short but descriptive, and it starts with just a single capital letter. So int age will be the name of our variable, and it will be a variable that will store integers in it, or numbers with no decimal places, just whole numbers. And once you know how to create a variable, you can then move on to adding additional variables. Here on a second line of a computer program, we've added a new variable. Once again, it's an integer variable, and this one is int old age. Once again, one single capitalized letter. It starts off with int, which of course matches up with integer. Now, once you create a variable and you let the computer, you basically give the computer the heads up that you're going to be using it, then what you can do is you can actually perform different operations with the variable. In this case, what we've done is we've taken our variable int age and we're setting it equal to a value of 14. And this layout is very important. On the left-hand side of the equal sign, you put the variable that you want to fill with a value. On the right-hand side of the equal sign, you put the value that you would like to place into the variable. another common operation is to fill one variable with some type of a calculation. In this case, what I've done is I have taken int age, which we know now has a value of 14 in it, and I'm multiplying it by 2. And I'm basically saying the result of this calculation should be stored in int old age. Now what I can say is, hey, computer, go ahead and tell me what now resides in old age, and the computer would display the number 28. All right. Now, what we have here is a list of the variables used in Visual Basic. It's a pretty long list. We want to focus just on a couple of these for most of this course. We are going to use the integer variable, the char variable, the string variable, and the Boolean variable. Later in this course, we'll be using the long and single variables, but we're not going to worry about them right now. A couple key things here. One is you can see the 4 different types of variables. You can see the prefix. Those are the 3 lowercase letters that we will begin the names of all of our variables with. And then you see a formal definition of exactly what these variables do. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause this screencast and go ahead and jot down the 4 different types of variables and the prefixes assigned to them, so you have that as a reference. And I'm going to give you just a second to do that, and then I'm going to give you a kind of every man's or every woman's definition of each of these, just so that you have a simpler definition to jot down. Okay, so for an integer, the easiest thing to do is jot down as a description a number without a decimal component. And if you actually try to enter a number with a decimal component, it just rounds off the number. Char is a single character. That's pretty easy. In theory, the thing to remember is that a character could be any key you can hit on the keyboard. An uppercase A, a lowercase a 1, an at symbol, a right parenthesis, those are all characters. And a char variable can store one of them. A string is a variable that can store many characters. Typically, you'd find things in a string anywhere from a word to a couple sentences. A Boolean variable is a variable that only stores true or false, which becomes useful in programming, as you will see, but we're not going to dwell on it too much at this point. Okay, last thing before I give you an example is I'd like to show you 2 commonly used shortcuts when declaring and using variables. The first one that you see here is one in which I declare the variable, and on the same line I set it equal to a value. So after this line of code executes, the computer knows that there's a new variable called int age out there, and that it equals, and that it's filled with the value of 14. Now another commonly used shortcut is to declare 2 variables of the same type on one line. You just separate them with a comma, and you can declare actually 3, 4, 5, however many variables you need to. This is a way to declare multiple variables of the same type with the least amount of typing possible. All right, so with that under our belts, let's go ahead and let's get started with Visual Basic. All right, Visual Basic.